There's only one thing worse than a root canal. It's buying a brand new luxury car that you have buyer's remorse and you want to sell it within a year. That's right, there's a lot of people that buy that new luxury car and realize that it's not what they expected. Poor technology, reliability, high maintenance costs, or the big repairs once warranty runs out. As IC Cars collected data of over 18.5 million vehicles, put that data together and came up with the top 10 most likely to resell within the first year in the luxury car segment. I'm going to get that list together, share the basic specs, common failures, annual maintenance costs, and why in fact you may want to actually pitch that car or avoid it altogether. Let's get into it now. Life's too short to drive boring cars. So the first one let's talk about is the Jaguar F-Pace. There's 4 different drivetrains. The 2-liter Ingenium 4-cylinder engine that's turbocharged. There's also a 3-liter inline 6 that's mild hybrid. There's also the SVR, which is a 5-liter supercharged V8, my personal favorite with 550 ponies. There's also a hybrid plug-in version called the P400E that actually features a 2-liter 4-cylinder engine and an electric motor that produces a combined 400 horsepower. While there were rare, old-school 6-speed manual gearboxes in original versions, the vast majority of late-model F-Paces now feature an 8-speed ZF automatic transmission. Absolutely bulletproof. That's not the issue. And I've reviewed these SUVs before, and I personally love the F-Pace, but not in its base format. I've noticed the base 4-cylinder engine a little bit rough, and it shakes a little bit, and it feels quite unrefined. But one common issue, infotainment glitches. I had the same problem in my F-Type R, where the infotainment system flakes out, and then sometimes you have to get a new SIM card. It orders it in, it takes you 2 weeks to get it, and then it still never works properly. That's not uncommon for screens that freeze up and all kinds of other electrical gremlins related to the infotainment and other electronics. Cooling system failures. No shortage there. My car was fine too, but there's an infamous Y-pipe on some of those V8 engines and the older V6 engines that had a seam along the side. They would crack with age and then they'd pour a bunch of coolant all over. One big risk, obviously, don't ignore your cooling temperature issues. If it starts to overheat, shut it off immediately. But that's a common issue. Some cooling system woes and oil leak issues from time to time. Rear differentials have been a problem. You've got to make sure you do maintenance on your electronic differentials. And another big issue on the base 2-liter Ingenium engine is the timing chain. They wear, they start to make noise, a cold start rattle. Buyer beware. Don't buy those cars new. And a lot of people start hearing about it. Read it on the forum and understand that all of a sudden, either the older diesel or the 2-liter Ingenium, by the time the warranty's gone, that's probably when it's going to fail. And sadly, that's often the case. Annual service is also a factor that people realize, and that's a big reason they toss it after a year. They get it into the service bay, and after a year, it's time. You get the warning from the local service supplier, and all of a sudden you take it in, you get this bill, and it says $1,800. Whoa, that's not covered under warranty. And a lot of people buy into these. They love the cars. It's cool. But then all of a sudden, $1,500 to $2,000 is almost an average annual service. And even my F-Type R, I found myself constantly $1,500, $2,000, $2,500 each and every year. And these Jaguar F-Paces are clearly in line with even my F-Type, especially if you're getting the supercharged V8. That's when the prices really start to climb. But if you're looking for some competition, a couple of options are Mercedes-Benz GLC, which is an SUV version of what I have, the C300, and if we're being honest, the build quality isn't as nice. The Jaguar is a nicer product, if we're being honest, especially the facelift with the improved infotainment and interior. I find the Jaguar a nicer product, but also the BMW X3 is another great competitor, especially when you go to the X3 M40i and you get that inline 6 with the B58. That's an absolute legend. Or even better, the X3M, absolute a monster in terms of performance, right in line with competition like the SVR. So both great competitors, but the Jaguar is nice. It does feel special, but it comes at a cost, and most people decide, wow, I bit off way more than I can handle. So the percentage of people that end up selling their Jaguar F-Pace is 13.3%, and remember, keep that in mind, the industry average 3.6%, so the substantially higher number of people decide to toss their new F-Pace out the door and hand their keys back after a year. The next luxury vehicle in line is a BMW, and about 13.4% of the owners hand those back within a year. We're talking about BMW's venerable 5 Series car, which happens to be one of my favorite, but it also depreciates like it's going out of style. And people see that depreciation. They buy their car brand new, they pay all the extra fees. Next thing you know, they've got it a year later. They look at what the market value is on the secondary market, and they are running scared because this is one of BMW's hardest depreciating cars. But it does feature a lot of great drivetrain. You get a base 2-liter 4-cylinder engine, the B48 in late models here now, absolutely amazing in the 530. You also get a 530e, which is a 2-liter turbo 4, and a plug-in hybrid. You also get the 540, which is my personal favorite, gives you the B58, 3-liter turbocharged inline 6, absolute legend, very durable and reliable. But you also get the N63, which is the 4.4-liter twin-turbo V8. Remember, the hot V that smokes turbos, smokes plastics, and also smokes valve guides and ends up burning oil. The one benefit is these BMWs all come with the 8-speed ZF automatic transmission. Again, one of the workhorses and most reliable in the industry. 3 common issues that a lot of owners find out with some miles on them are some of the suspension components. Bushings, ball joints, control arms. They tend to wear a little prematurely. Cooling system woes. Yes, you've heard about it. Water pumps, at least, thank goodness, now they're mechanical water pumps, but they still leak. There's still problems. Oil filter housing, they can crack, split. They can mix oil and coolant. That's a big issue in some of these cases. So that has been known. Some of the snap together fittings, that's also a common issue. And coolant leaks are not unknown. But the fact is, between 50, 60, 70,000 miles is where you're likely going to start seeing some of these repairs, even with the B58 engines. They're great engines, but there's still some maintenance, and you've still got to take care of those issues. Allegedly, recently, there's some lawsuits now coming down, creeping out of the woodwork related to the all-wheel drive X-Drive systems, that transfer case, which has been known to pile up, seems to be just outside of warranty. The more people seem to hear about these one-off horror stories, the more freaked out they get. And within a year, sometimes I've had enough. Not only that, the maintenance costs are also going to scare a lot of people away. These are the types of cars many people are first-time owners of luxury cars end up buying into these sort of entry to lower level luxury vehicle brands, and then they're surprised and shocked by the big repair costs. With the average brake job costing about $1,000 if you're just doing pads and flushing the system, the average water pump could cost you over $1,000 to $1,200 US. Suspension repairs, the sky's the limit. You can pay thousands of dollars for that. That usually comes with some miles, really not too much to fear in the first few years. Annual servicing that ranges between $1,000 to $2,000 each and every year. After 10 years, you spent $10,000 to $15,000 keeping that BMW on the road. And people look at that, extrapolate and say, I can't afford $2,000 every single year. I can barely afford to feed myself. And as a result, many owners, after a year or beyond, they start to realize that this isn't exactly what it's all chalked up to be. I thought it was more than it is, and many people just decide to hand their keys back. That being said, there are other options like the Audi A6, not my personal favorite. However, the Mercedes E-Class is probably the sweet spot in Mercedes land, and if I could be so bold, the E63 AMG has definitely always been the sweet spot for me. The third one, I can't even figure out why anybody would buy these in the first place. You look at them from the back, they look like a giant toilet bowl from the backside. Front side's not that impressive either. Now, the interior is nice and plush and well made, and it makes you feel like the king and queen. Wait a minute. But it is very luxurious, and that being said, reliability, maintenance with the JLR groups are going to be aligned with like what we're talking about with the Jaguar products and Land Rover. They're all going to be very expensive. Maintenance costs are going to be expensive on the annual. Parts are pricey, and if you don't have a dealer in your area, it's going to be very difficult to service. The Land Rover Discovery is one of those vehicles that people just regret. There's buyer's remorse written all over it, with about 13.6% of owners handing the keys back within a year because the base 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine with 296 horsepower feels a little bit lightweight for such a large machine. And while the 3-liter inline 6 mild hybrid system that makes about 355 horsepower feels just about right, and the 8-speed automatic transmissions on the money, with a 0 to 60 time of about 6.5 seconds, it's certainly sprightly. I'll be honest, some of these failures are just a pain in the ass, and I've experienced some of this in my own world. BMWs that have air suspension systems, that's right, that's one of the big issues. You get outside there and one of the ass ends sinking, and you wonder what happened to it. That's because the air ran out and something's leaking. The airbags or part of the suspension system is starting to let go, and that costs thousands of dollars to retrofit. Coolant leaks, head gasket leaks. You can imagine coolant or oil can be a potential failure for some of these, particularly in the base 2-liter engines. The differential has been known to leak oil as well, and electrical problems galore. Gremlins, that's a little term I like to throw around. With infotainment, electronic transmission issues, window regulator, sunroof, you name it. Fuel pump issues, and the timing chain we spoke so highly of on the previous Jaguar. Annual service costs? pretty much online with Jaguar, $1,500 to about $2,000 a year. With bigger years, every once in a while, you're going to be stuck paying $3,000 to $4,000 for some of the big, more intensive maintenance. But even the first year, when people see this and they have to dish out $2,000 for their first maintenance service, they get running scared. They're thinking, that's not what I signed up for. I want to sell this thing now. And according to Car Edge, there's about a 51% chance of experiencing a catastrophic extreme failure within the first 10 years. But if it wasn't devastating depreciation or extreme high maintenance costs, there's a plethora of reasons why the original owners of these cars tend to hand them back within a year. That said, there's a couple of great options. The Audi Q7, again, not as durable or robust, but it does give you 3 rows, and it's a great alternative with one of the best all-wheel drive systems. And even better is the Lexus GX. The GX 550 is a great alternative, or wait a minute, not alternative, it should actually be the go-to. Now, even the 550 is also on the recall list for Lexus because of the 3.4-liter twin-turbo V6 that has been known to have some catastrophic failures. That said, I'd risk my money with the GX over one of these Land Rover products. The fourth is basically the car I own, the Mercedes-Benz C-Class. Yes, as a matter of fact, 14% of the original owners hand them back within a year. Disappointed. Honestly, after owning ours for 4 years, I'm not shocked. You know, with plastics that creak and rattle inside and components that just seem to make noise when they shouldn't. Some of the electronics and electrics seem to creep in there, some weird faults and gremlins and front-end differential noise. There's no surprises that I have not heard yet. And a lot of C-Class owners are experiencing the same issues. Sadly, even with the 2-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine and a mild hybrid producing 255 horsepower, made it up to the 9G-tronic automatic transmission, it shifts wonderfully. It's nice to drive, and all of the amenities are there. Quality isn't necessarily there, and I think this is a classic example of where people buy it, it looks wonderful under the showroom lights, and then you drive it for a while and it starts to creak and rattle, and you realize that, wow, that's not the Mercedes I knew back when my dad had one from, 22 years ago, when those were actually built well. They don't necessarily feel the same way they used to feel. It definitely feels like a shell of what they used to be. That said, there are some common issues. Oil consumption in some cases, turbocharger failure, timing chains have been known to go on some models. Some of these sensors and electronic gremlins that creep in there to tell you that there's people around or there's something in your way or backing up or weird lights, and it just popping up faults on your dashboard constantly. We've had no shortage of that. You go to the dealer, they reboot it, they download, yeah, there's some kind of a communication issue. It's good for a while, then it comes back. This has just been an ongoing issue for the last 2.5 years. Suspension, brake wear, other areas, they tend to wear out quickly. Now they're made well, they handle well, and these cars are definitely built with the German precision, but they do feel a little fragile. Big brakes, cross-drilled, but it does mean they come with an extensive cost when it's time to change your pads and rotors. Now with Mercedes, you can either purchase the maintenance plan, which obviously can pay for some of your maintenance for a number of years, but if you're not, there's typically an A and a B. The A is a simpler maintenance plan. It's generally an inspection with an oil change, and the B generally involves a lot more filters, fluids, and inspections, and it tends to get a little bit more expensive. It seems like once people start digging through the owner's manual, realizing what it costs and what it entails, $1,500 to $2,000 annually, sometimes people get freaked out. But with these Mercedes-Benz, it's more often related to disappointment with the build quality, and that's been my general experience. We like the car and the way it drives, but there's still all those rattly noises that seem to just take the fun off of the game. If you are thinking about buying a vehicle in this class, there's a couple of great alternatives. So the BMW 3 Series, and against the C300, you'd probably compare BMW's 3 Series with the 330, which is going to have the B48 engine, which produces 255 horsepower, and arguably is a little bit more fun to drive. It feels a little bit better stapled together, and there's certainly less of those electronic faults. That said, BMW generally has more oil leaks and coolant leaks to deal with, where Mercedes is dealing with more unexpected electronic gremlins. The fifth one on our list is Range Rover Evoque, believe it or not. Now, I personally love the looks of these, and I thought maybe buy one myself until I started researching it, and I really got to think twice. But there are some engines that are kind of interesting. Yeah, sure, you get the 2-liter base engine, the turbocharged 4, the Ingenium engine, which they use in almost every product in the JLR group, from Range Rovers to Jaguars. That's their base engine. Remember, we talked about timing chains and oil consumption, fuel leaks, and electronic gremlins? that's the one. With anywhere from 200 to 296 horsepower and up to 400 newton meters of torque, 0 to 60 time of 6.5 seconds means it's kind of fun to drive, but there's also a plug-in hybrid version called the P300E that features a 1.5-liter turbo engine and an electric motor that gives you a combined output of 309 horsepower, makes it very punchy. Now this comes with a 9-speed ZF automatic transmission, and we know that 9-speed has been utilized in other products in Stellantis, and that one's not the same level of durability we find in the 8-speed. And that takes us to the three major issues: transmissions, leaks, electronic related, drivability, jerkiness, just not as smooth as refined as the ZF 8-speed. Engine oil leaks, another issue, with timing chains being a catastrophic failure just waiting to happen. A lot of people hear about this on the forums. They buy their brand new Evoque, start researching it, and get freaked right out. 9-10 months, they want to trade it in. Now, annual service costs are slightly less. This is a smaller vehicle, $900 to about $1,500 US to service these vehicles every single year. But beware, there are some big potential repairs like transmission failures, $3,000 to $8,000 depending on the level of failure. Timing chains, which could cost you $1,500 to $2,000 or more if it actually fails outright and it blows the engine. And a turbo, which could cost you $2,500 to $3,500 for replacement. If you're thinking about competition, Audi has the Q3. Not the biggest fan. Again, you gotta like their TFSI engines. I'm not the biggest fan. They tend to be oil burners, turbo issues, carbon fouling. I'm good. But it's an option. If you like their all-wheel drive systems, Audi definitely has that covered. BMW has the X3, a very tough, compelling conversation, one that's really hard to avoid. They've got an engine for every market. But directly competing with this Range Rover Evoque would be probably the base trim X3 30i, which gives you the B48 engine, which is the 255 horsepower turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder engine. That was a mouthful. Because as many as 16.4% of the owners of these Evoques end up handing them back within a year. They get freaked out. They hear of some of the catastrophic issues, the quality challenges, and honestly, the interior is a little bit simplistic and a little bit dull. So after that, people start to think, you know what, this is a Range Rover? Yeah, that's not really what I signed up for. The huge loan payments that a lot of owners aren't necessarily accustomed to, especially considering this is the price point, entry point for Range Rover, that's clearly bringing people from a non-luxury car brand over to a luxury car segment like this, means they're generally not used to it. They're coming from places like Mazdas and Toyotas and Hondas, and they want to try something like this for a change, and all of a sudden are shocked by quadruple the cost for annual service. That's a big reason people get rid of these. The sixth one is Mercedes-Benz, and it's the GLA. The GLA is sort of that entry point. You know, it's that small little SUV that's kind of wagon-like, and it does take the authenticity out of the driving experience for Mercedes-Benz. First of all, predominantly it's a front-wheel drive. Secondly, it uses a dual-clutch gearbox, which isn't as smooth as refined as many of the other torque converter autos that Benz is using. And thirdly, it just is thinner, hollower, and it just doesn't have the refinement that the rest of the brand has. The driving dynamics are a lot stiffer, more rigid, more jarring, and honestly, if you're feeling sick or you've got the flu, riding around in a GLA is absolutely a horrific experience. I know. I took a test drive one a few years ago. I wasn't feeling well, and I tell you, I couldn't get out of there quick enough. It's a little bit jarring. It's a little bit abrasive. And if really what you're expecting is the luxury experience, you're not going to find it with the GLA. The GLA is more in line with, compare it directly to products like the Mazda CX-50 or the CX-5. That's really more of what you're going to get when you're driving this vehicle. It's small. It's a little rough. It's a little rounded off at the corners. It's not quite as refined. But approximately 16.7% of the brand new owners of the GLA end up handing the keys back after they're done well within a year. Sure, it features the 2-liter Turbo 4 in the GLA 250 and the AMG models, which actually have a hotter version, because the GLA 250 gives you about 221 horsepower, and instead of being a longitudinal engine like you're finding in the C-Class, it's transversely mounted, driving to the front wheels with 4MATIC as an upgrade option to either a 7-speed dual clutch or an 8-speed dual clutch gearbox. Most of them do come with 4MATIC all-wheel drive systems, but there is a hot upgrade, the 45 AMG, which does provide a massive amount of performance with up to 382 horsepower. Would you believe that? Shocking for such a small car. But the dual clutch gearbox, to note, does prioritize quick shifts, sporty driving experience well above the overall smoothness that you would expect out of, say, something like a Mercedes E-Class. You would be grossly disappointed. 3 key issues to note: DCTs are jerky, aggressive, abrasive, a little bit of a rattle noise from the timing chain, which has been known to be an issue in some of these engines. And if you ignore a rattling timing chain, that could be the last big mistake you make, well on your way to paying for a $14,000 engine replacement. Electronic infotainment gremlins, and I already spoke of our C-Class, many of the same issues apply here as well. Annual service, if you don't have part of the maintenance plan that you can buy when you buy it brand new, then you're expected to pay anywhere from $800, $1,200. If you're on the A year, it might be a little cheaper, could be in that $700, $800. Later on, higher miles, all of a sudden you're dealing with transmission, engine, all kinds of filters. That could be up in that $2,000 range, and it does start to get a little bit of expensive. One of the key competitors, I would say, look at the BMW X1, look at the BMW X2. I love the older X2s. I think the new ones are horrific looking, but the X1s are still great options, and they do feature a great engine with the ACE transmission or some of their better modern day transmissions as of late, of course, and do provide you with a turbocharged 2-liter 4, direct competition, and a great alternative. But these are fun. I do like the GLA. It is actually fun to drive. It does feel sporty, but if you're going there with the intentions that you're buying a luxury car, you're probably going to be disappointed. Guess what? The next one is another Mercedes, and 1 in 5, or about 20.4% of the original owners turn the keys back in within a year. And it's the Mercedes-Benz CLA, which is the sedan version of the GLA SUV that I just spoke of. The CLA, on the other hand, is more of a car. You get 4 doors, a trunk. It's got that sleek back end, and I personally love the looks of them. I've always really liked the looks. They look a lot like a smaller CLS, and I really fell in love with these when they first came out. You can get a variety of different engines. The CLA 250 gives you 221 horsepower. The AMG CLA 35 gives you 302 horsepower. And the CLA 45S, you can get well over 400 horsepower from a turbocharged 2-liter 4-banger. All of this squeezed through all-wheel drive in the 4MATIC or front-wheel drive and a 7-speed or 8-speed dual-clutch gearbox. Again, the same refinement challenges, a little rough around the edges, a little unrefined, the interior is a little dressed down, and it does feel a little price point. Classic oil consumption issues, potential timing chain issues, jerky shifts, electronic gremlins. The same thing goes. It's virtually the same vehicle underneath with a different shell of a body as the GLA. But they're not that level of precision and innovation that you're getting in the more premium models. If you want that, step up to the E-Class or even the GLE, and then you're going to be welcome to the world of true luxury in the Mercedes-Benz way. Annual maintenance for the CLA is probably going to be around $1,200, $1,500 or give or take. And you know, some good competition, cars like the BMW 2 Series, you know, the old Grand Coupe 235 or 228s, those are kind of fun as well. Or you could even step into the 3 Series, which I think is a little outside of the space. The 3 Series is more in line with the C-Class Mercedes. The CLA is more like a 2 Series. And that being said, you can also get into a Lexus IS. Absolutely amazing vehicle. Or the UX SUV is a little bit more in line as well, smaller vehicle. But the Lexus IS would absolutely dominate all these in terms of reliability. For fun factor, I would probably put the CLA probably number 1 over a base 330, but they're all fun cars. That being said, many people are just disappointed with the build quality, the rough around the edges feel, and the gearbox, and they end up just handing the keys back. The next one is another Mercedes-Benz. This is getting old. We're talking about the GLB, also on the same platform as the CLA and the GLA, and they're all basically the same type of vehicle. Same 2-liter turbo engine, transversely mounted, front-wheel drive with 4MATIC upgrade, dual-clutch gearbox. The only difference is the GLB offers up more of a square body, more of a utilitarian look. It doesn't look as sleek, and it's more utility. You can fit more luggage in there, and there's actually an optional 3rd row that you can put in this vehicle too. I actually like the vehicles for their versatility. They give you all the same features inside, but they're more boxy. If you like that boxy look, that's what you're going to get. But they do have the same issues: oil consumption, turbos, potential timing chain issues, jerkiness in the gearbox. Nothing new. The maintenance costs are going to be in that $1,000 to $1,200 a year range as well. But again, people are just disappointed with the squeaks and the rattles, interior fit and finish, and the quality is just not quite where they expect it to be for a Mercedes. And after a year or so, a lot of people just hand the keys back. In some cases, people buying these kind of cars are at the entry point anyway, and their budgets, maybe they're getting ahead of themselves, taking out car loans for 84, 96 months, and now realizing that's more than I can handle. On top of it, the build quality, they just don't really, not too interested in keeping this vehicle for very long. 21.2% of GLB owners hand the keys back within a year. Now, the next one on my list is kind of pricey, and this is probably part of it. At $78,000 plus, the Porsche Macan is a very expensive vehicle. It's probably one of the best handling, best performing, and honestly, the best built of all of these classifications. It's a great vehicle. I would personally step up up to the S or GTS or turbo models and stay away from the base trim, which is essentially a Volkswagen 4-banger. Stay in the higher trim levels. Yes, they compete with the SQ5, especially when you're dealing with the Macan S or GTS. They have great engines, great performance. You can get the base 2-liter turbo 4, which gives you about 261 horsepower. Step up to the Macan S, which gives you a 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6 that produces 375 horse. That's where I would go for best sweet spot. Or you can get the Macan GTS, which goes even further, 2.9-liter twin-turbo V6, but bumps up the power substantially to 434 horsepower. Amazing cars, fun to drive, more like a car than they drive like an SUV. They come with the 7-speed PDK, which is Porsche's double-clutch gearbox, so they're absolutely amazing. Lightning fast, durable, the best in the breed. Oil leaks are part of it, cam housing, and a variety of oil leaks from different spots. That's why I would step up to the higher trim levels. The base 4 tends to leak more, have more issues, but they all have potential issues. PDK, rough shifts, jerkiness, and as well, transfer cases have been known to catastrophically fail, resulting in huge expenses, and people read about that and they get scared. They want to get rid of this as soon as physically possible. The benefit is, though, the secondary market's strong for these, so people look at this and say, well, I've had my fun, I've had my fix, I'm going to sell it and get most of my money out of this. But annual maintenance is excruciatingly high with $2,500 to $4,000 annual maintenance. That's a big reason why people hand these back. They get their first taste of the Porsche experience and realize that's way more than I want to bite off. A great competition is BMW's X3, the M40i. Great vehicle, great performance, and right in line. Porsche Macan is one of the best, and you pay for that level of performance. One of my personal favorites. I anticipate that. I've owned many Porsches along the way, but a lot of people don't expect the unexpected. Unless you're a true Porsche enthusiast, these kind of numbers will shock you, and that's why people hand them back. With a return rate within a year of 22.2%, many people say goodbye to the Porsche Macan within the first year. The last one is a Land Rover Discovery Sport. Not quite the great vehicle that even the full-size Discovery is. It's a smaller vehicle. Comes with the Ingenium engine, the usual timing chain, oil leaks, coolant leak problems, infotainment issues, annual maintenance costs of $1,500 up to $2,000 and beyond. People are shocked by that. The Audi Q5 or the BMW X3 are great alternatives because as many as 28.3% of Land Rover Discovery Sport owners hand the keys back and walk away and said, I've had my fill, I've had my fun, I'm out. Hit that subscribe button, but most importantly, check out that video. You're going to love that list of those vehicles as well. And if you're looking for specific, the best BMWs I would buy, right there. Hope to see each and every one of you real soon, everybody. Have a lovely day. We'll talk to you then. All right, bye-bye.